Let's start with the rapid fire round. At what age do you want to retire?
Gosh, I don't know that I ever want to retire.
How long does it take you to get ready in the mornings?
15 minutes.
Most embarrassing moment of your life?
It's too many to choose from.
Favorite color?
Red.
What time of day are you most inspired?
Early in the morning.
How many hours of sleep can you survive on?
5.
Fill in the blank. An upcoming finance trend is blank.
An upcoming finance trend is portable identity.
The city in which the best kiss of your life happened.
San Jose, Puerto Rico.
Pick one, Mark Zuckerberg or Elon Musk.
Neither.
The biggest mistake of your career.
Not believing in myself.
How do you relax?
Exercise.
How many cups of coffee do you drink per day?
Way too many.
A habit of yours that you hate.
I drink way too much coffee.
The most valuable skill you've learned in life.
Patience.
Your favorite Netflix show.
3-body problem.
One-word description of your leadership style.
Servant.
Top priority in your daily schedule.
Prioritization.
Ideal vacation spot for relaxation.
Belize.
Key factor for maintaining a work-life balance.
Forsake the concept of work-life balance.
Memorable career milestone.
My first startup acquisition.
All right, that's the end of the rapid fire round.
This episode is sponsored by Outgrow.co, the world's first all-in-one interactive content builder. Use Outgrow to build quizzes, calculators, tests, polls, forms, contests, and chatbots to generate leads and keep your audience engaged. Sign up for a free trial at https://outgrow.co.
So we can go on to the bigger questions, which you can answer with as much time and ease and length as you like. The first one is, in January, FinCEN released a highly anticipated report on the state of identity-related suspicious activity. You took the opportunity to analyze the findings. What were the key takeaways regarding the state of identity verification?
And I'll start by praising FinCEN for putting that FTA together and doing that research. I love data, and I love the willingness of an agency to take a year's worth of data, crunch the numbers, find the trends, and release a really detailed analysis on it. I think that it's just so good for the industry and so good for everyone. So I really love that the government agencies are willing to have that type of transparency and do that type of analysis. So I think the biggest takeaway from it is the vast amount of financial crime and fraud that's ultimately linked to identity on the front end. So one of the things that I think makes common sense when you think about it is that if you're going to commit a crime or you're going to defraud someone, almost always you need to be anonymous to make that happen. And if you can accurately and repeatably resolve the identity of both parties in a transaction, it makes it really, really hard to commit crimes or to defraud other people, because there's accountability and there's true knowledge of the individual. And what we got out of that FTA was that of all the Bank Secrecy Act reports, the suspicious activity reports that were created in 2021, almost half of them were rooted in some type of failure to accurately resolve identity. So I think the biggest takeaway out of that whole document was that it's a pernicious problem. That identity is much farther reaching than most people think, and that this huge amount of crime and fraud and other things that are just so detrimental to all of society are ultimately linked back to the failure to accurately identify the individuals involved in the beginning.
And so how is LSEG then responding to these challenges that have been identified in the report?
Well, I think we're continuing to invest heavily in digital identity. So In 2022, LSEG bought a company called GDC, or Global Data Consortium. And a few of us came into the London Stock Exchange Group through that acquisition. We've also continued to invest and acquire a few others in the space. And our goal is to create an inclusive, frictionless, consumer-friendly means to compliantly identify identities. So we've invested really heavily in working with data sources all around the world, in working with electronic identity providers. So that's really our next focus, is working with government issued, bank issued, and other types of electronic IDs, because we believe that, I think, for the safety and security of our financial infrastructure, right, we need to understand and identify all the individuals involved in transactions. But by the same token, we think that everyone globally has the right to be identified. So the World Bank published a report around the state of identity, and they currently say that there are around 850 million people around the globe that don't have a formal identity. They don't have government issued documents. They don't have an identity number. Many of them don't have formal birth dates. So when we talk about protecting our financial infrastructure and using identity as a sort of key piece of crime prevention and fraud prevention, what we can't do is leave out the 850 million people in the world who don't have an identity, and then the countless others that are recent immigrants that are fleeing from some type of persecution or some type of hardship in their home country. So as we start looking at that global look at identity, our key priorities are to protect that financial infrastructure and be a good servant, be a good citizen in our world, but also to make sure that we are including all of those people in the world who don't necessarily have a passport or an identity document or a readily available way to verify who they are.
But how about AI and identity then? You've published an article, 2024, the year AI breaks content-based IDB, and this suggests significant advancement in AI for identity verification. What are the most promising AI technologies in the space?
So I think the key when you look at generative AI for identity verification, in some ways it's most frequently used as a threat. So one of the key insights from the research of that article were that we found a few sources that were saying that there were 30 people employed in the development of AI for every one person employed in policing and regulating AI. So when you think about the standard way today that you verify your identity online, most of the time that is going to be pulling out your phone, taking a picture of the card in your wallet, taking a picture of your face, and using those two pieces of user-generated content to verify your identity. But as generative AI and other technologies really rapidly increase in capability, what you're going to see is that you can less and less believe those two pieces of user-generated content. How do you know that that's actually a photo of someone's ID and not just something that was generated immediately for the purposes of defrauding the system? How do you know that that's a real selfie? And I think there are a lot of things that we can do. There are a lot of players in the space like Sardine that are doing a great job of using AI against AI to confirm that this is real content. This is not something that's been generated by an AI. But I think ultimately we're going to have to move to a place of distrust of any content a user generates and provides us until we can verify that it's real and authentic.
And so how far away are we from that kind of regulation being imposed?
How far away from the regulation being imposed? I'm not sure. I think that the threat and the concern is very real. So one of the articles I cite in that blog post is a gentleman named Joseph Cox from 404 Media, who went through and signed up for a trading account on a popular crypto platform with a totally synthetic identity that he created in about 15 minutes for about $15. So I don't know where the regulation is, but I think the threat is very real today if a journalist is publishing his own experiences bypassing very prominent providers of biometric and document verification for about $15.
So let's talk a little bit about another article of yours, which is shining a light on the shadows why strengthening corporate registry verification matters. You emphasize here the importance of verifying beneficial ownership data with other sources. What are the most critical steps needed to enhance corporate registry verification?
And I can imagine that the words corporate registry verification don't exactly make most people's hearts go pitter pat. It's not the most exciting of topics, and it can sound kind of dry. But when you think about it, one of the key ways financial crime is conducted today is through the use of shell companies. It's one of the easiest ways to hide money and to hide transactions in our global financial infrastructure. So what happens is we have to start shifting our focus on identities from just being living individuals like you and me and over to the shell corporations that are commonly used by people who are laundering money, trafficking drugs, evading sanctions, and doing all kinds of things to commit other financial crimes. So the use of corporate registries is incredibly important there, because we need to know when we transact with a business or a legal entity, is it real? Is it actually owned by a famous drug cartel, or is it owned by a trustworthy person that lives down the street? And the way we get to that data is corporate registries. Now, the struggle with corporate registries, though, is there's a very low threshold to the data that goes into a corporate registry. So what we see a lot is for like Companies House in the UK, there are no steps taken to verify the data that's put into Companies House. I could open a business in Companies House for about £12, and I could call myself Winnie the Pooh. And there would be an official corporation whose director is Winnie the Pooh in the UK that you would easily be able to look up and see, and it's real. But obviously, Winnie the Pooh, as we all know, unfortunately, is not real. So I think it's incredibly important for us to continue opening that data, but to make sure that the data that we have there is good and is of high quality and has really been verified.
So as you know, there is a difference between fraud, money laundering, tax evasion. There is financing and sanctions, as mentioned, right? In this new era that is happening in Gen AI, do you see any asynchrony between these type of financial crime types, or do you see that all of them are facing exactly the same threats?
That's a really good question. So I think we definitely see asynchrony. There's never a place where everything is happening simultaneously at exactly the same level. But what we tend to see is external forces that create that unevenness or that asynchrony. So one of the things that we see globally, and particularly in the United States and a few other countries, is more of a permissive attitude towards things like drugs. And that leads to less pressure to launder money. That leads to less pressure to commit financial crimes because there are legal outlets to transact there. What we see today, though, is a massive increase in focus on sanctions. So as the Ukraine conflict plays on, as many of these other conflicts around the world play on, and North American authorities and European authorities are adding new names to the sanctions list, are increasing penalties around failure to enforce sanctions. We're seeing a lot more effort, energy, technology deployed towards sanctions evasion, where maybe 5 to 10 years ago, that money would have been deployed towards like third-party money laundering for crimes associated with illegal drugs.
So now let's talk a bit about your regular day at work. So you wake up in the morning and then what?
So I am based in the United States. I work for the London Stock Exchange Group, which is obviously based in the UK. So I typically wake up around 6 or 6:30 to a flurry of emails from all my European colleagues who have been wondering why I am so lazy and slow to respond. So I typically get a burst of emails and sort of Teams chats that I respond to before my family gets up. My son and wife wake up. I help my son get ready for school, have breakfast with the family, and then back to work. So there's usually a pretty frenetic period of activity immediately before and immediately after breakfast and school routine with my son. And then we settle into what typically looks like lots of meetings.
Oh, so you'd say 100% of your time is made.
Not necessarily. So I would say probably 100% of my time before 1 p.m. New York time is meetings. And then as my colleagues in the day, then I'll typically get some open time, typically an hour or two, to create content and do deep work. Because ultimately, we're responsible for delivering content. We're responsible for delivering product. So I tend to pretty jealously guard those deep work periods in the afternoons.
So what advice would you have for job seekers looking for a job in your industry?
That's a really good question. So I think the advice that I would give to someone looking to start a career in our space is there are really a couple of ways to enter in. What's particularly interesting about this space is that it is nascent, it is emerging. It's not a space where you're going to have college courses that you can take. There's not a degree program. There really aren't even a ton of books to read because things are changing so quickly. By the time the book gets published, it's typically way out of date. So what I would recommend there's really sort of two ways to come in. One would be with a provider like us. And we always need people in support and customer service and in roles like that. And that's a great way to come in, learn the space, meet the customers, learn the products, learn the regulation, and then potentially move into another role. The other way to come into this field is through the financial institutions themselves. So there are multiple certifications for anti-money laundering, and there are always hiring. There's always a bank. There's always a peer-to-peer payments. There's always a fintech that is hiring someone with a CAM certification or something like that to do research, to monitor, to onboard customers. And that's another great way to learn the space from the inside out. But those are great roles to get started in identity.
So let's talk a bit about your article, Redefining Identity, the Power of Reusable Digital Identities. You discussed the transformative potential of reusable IDs here. How do reusable digital identities enhance security and user experience in financial services?
I'm so excited about portable and reusable IDs. So ultimately, if you think about your identity today, everybody thinks the card in their wallet. But when you think about your digital world, you have an almost infinite number of one-to-one relationships with companies, with services, with businesses, and they all have some element of your identity. So your Netflix account and your Amazon account and your library card and your bank account and all these different services that you use all digitally, each one has a unique version of you with a certain amount of information that you've provided them and a certain amount of information that they have collected on you. Now, you don't have access to that information. You don't have control over that information. And it's stored in a system that is probably unique to each of those services. So what ends up happening is Daniel Flowe have hundreds of Daniel Flowes spread across hundreds of services, stored in hundreds of backends that I have no control over or visibility into. So when we talk about portable identity, what we mean is taking all that back and putting it in the control of the individual. So that creates, we're really excited about a future where I can have a one-to-many relationship. I have central control over my identity. I control what services access what elements of my PII. And I have the ability, when I'm done with that service, to take that right to access my information back. So it moves to a place where we have control over our identities. We could potentially include other elements in our identities that aren't typically there. And it creates a world where our data is much more safe because, who knows? I had a MySpace account 15 years ago. God only knows where that data is. And I certainly have no ability to go back and find Tom and revoke all that data or that access from them. But I think in 5 years, we'll be in a place where I can say, I no longer use Netflix. I'm going to terminate my Netflix account. and I'm going to take all the data you have on me back and revoke your right to use it. So that creates a much more safe world, and it creates a much more user-friendly world when you start talking about financial institutions or others where we need to assert our identities. Becomes much simpler and more convenient.
And so what challenges have you encountered in promoting the adoption of these reusable digital identities among financial institutions?
So I think financial institutions welcome it. I think the struggle for most of them is they're nascent, and it's very challenging. There are very few standards. There's very little federation across these digital IDs. So it's choosing which ones to integrate, when to integrate them, and understanding, what ID is going to be the one that people coalesce on moving forward, and which ones are going to be left behind. And that's a hard decision to make, especially for when we look at like an FI, someone that's probably going to invest a lot of work and a lot of compliance and risk time in verifying and selecting which one to work with. They're very risk averse to discovering that the one they chose has fallen by the wayside and now no one uses it anymore.
So how has the marketing strategy for digital identity solutions in general evolved at LSEG over the past few years?
So I think that answer is probably deeply rooted in the acquisition of GDC. So there were some partner-led solutions that LSEG brought to market about 5 or 6 years ago. But in 2022, after the GUIACT acquisition in 21 and the GDC acquisition in 22, we really started going to market with a product that we create and control. So the biggest shift for us has been sort of a move away from necessarily selling directly to people in compliance, and understanding that our buyers in a lot of cases are interested in customer experience and they're interested in growth, and really learning how to engage with the right personas where we fix problems for them and make their lives easier.
And so what channels have proven most effective for reaching your target audiences?
So I think we're still working through that. That's definitely an area of learning and growth for us. We still see in-person events as a very large source of engagement and communication. We've also moved towards a lot more sort of content creation, writing more, publishing more, creating videos, and really moving back from talking about ourselves to talking about things that are happening in the space. And those two moves, I think, have really helped us engage with more people and have better conversations with them.
So when you talk about all this, what are the key messages that resonate most with these potential customers?
I think the message that resonates the most with our potential customers is about their potential customer, and really helping our potential customers understand that we understand their customer well, and that we both care about the same thing, which is helping them win more customers, helping them win happier customers, and helping them retain those customers. So the more that we can communicate that to our prospective customers, the better.
And so are there any common concerns or misconceptions regarding digital identity that come to fore here?
Yeah, I think one of the ones that I think happens a lot is, isn't that a compliance concern? Oh yeah, identity, that goes to compliance. And the answer is, of course, we value compliance. Compliance is important and helps keep us all safe. But most of the time when we talk about digital identity solutions, the person who cares the most is the person who cares the most about the customer. So that is a customer experience person. That's someone responsible for digitization or digital transformation, or someone that's responsible for growth. And that person is almost always the hardest to engage with, and the person that we have to find means to converse with.
So looking to the future then, what future trends do you foresee in the marketing of digital identity and compliance?
That is another great question. I really hope that we're continuing to move to a place where marketing is more of a value add to our customers. I think we've finally shaken some of the old enterprise technology company marketing trends that, hey, look at me, I've got a new thing, look at me. And I think we've moved to a place of engagement, of communication, of learning a lot more. And I really hope that we continue along that path and our marketing engagement start looking a lot more like a path to be educated, a path to converse, and a path to connect.
Okay.
Okay. So would you say that after wrapping this up, these new digital identity trends are more a work that is going to be for the first line of defense or the second line of defense, or how do you see the balance between those two?
It's a really good question. So I think it's across the entire customer lifecycle. So I definitely think there is a first line of defense, meaning when I first establish a bank account, when I first sign up to be an Uber driver, there's that first line of defense of, is Daniel a real person? Am I really interacting with the real Daniel? Does that real Daniel have the intent to defraud? Is he untrustworthy? Or is he somebody that I would want using my service, driving my car, transacting on my platform? But then it becomes across the entire customer life cycle, because none of us stay consistent across. I may have been a good actor when I signed up, and I may now be a bad actor. It may have been me who signed up, and it may be you who's trying to access my account this time. So what ends up happening is I would say that identity really needs to be woven into the entire customer life cycle. Every time we interact, every time we transact, every time I sign into the Uber app to give somebody a ride, every time I stay with an Airbnb, that my identity needs to be verified to ensure that I'm not creating any threat or I'm not opening up any vectors for fraud.
Right, so the last question for you is of a personal kind. What would you be doing in your life if not this?
What I'd be doing in my life if not this? I would probably be an engineer, like a physical engineer or a mechanic. I am Daniel Flowe. I am the head of digital identity at the London Stock Exchange Group. Catch me on the Technologist of the Month show.